Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Anxiety is something a lot of people deal with, but very few actually understand. It's often treated at the surface, managed, suppressed, or walked around without really addressing what's happening underneath. Today's guest is Dr. Troy Rohn. He has spent decades studying the brain, but more importantly, he has lived through anxiety himself and now is exploring a completely different way of thinking about how we treat it. Troy, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right, so yes, we're gonna dive into your 20s a little bit, right? So, in your early journey, you've studied anxiety for decades, but you've also lived with it. So, what did that experience look like for you early on?
Well, one of the things I would say about my own personal experience is, and one of the biggest risk factors for anxiety disorders is childhood neglect, trauma, or abuse. And so, I kind of grew up in a household where that a lot of that was going on. I didn't really have a good relationship with my mom. My mom also was married 3 times and was a alcoholic, drug addict. So those were kind of the seeds of anxiety that were kind of planted into me. And I always kind of was able to cope with my anxiety pretty well. Um, But I think for me, it really began to manifest after COVID. So we know, for example, just the data, if you look at pre and post COVID, the numbers of people diagnosed with anxiety and or depression has quadrupled. And I think for me that's when I really began to, my anxiety really began to affect kind of my professional and personal relationships. And so, my interests really in anxiety really came from my own kind of personal frustration. As I said, I've dealt with anxiety myself. And what stood out to me really was how limited the treatment options felt, especially, my kind of anxiety where it kind of hits hard and fast. Um, the standard, medications usually take weeks to work and they don't really help me in those acute moments. So, at the same time, of course, my background in neuroscience and pharmacology, I started looking at this not just as a patient, but, as a scientist asking, why is this still the best we can do? And so that led me to kind of think about this problem differently, instead of just kind of developing new drugs that broadly kind of affect the brain. What if we could actually target the underlying biology more precisely, more directly? And that's kind of what led me into gene therapy and how I helped co-found this company called Cognitoics that's really focusing on building a new kind of treatment for anxiety, for memory impairments, and other potential neuropsychiatric disorders.
Wow. Okay, so a lot of people hear anxiety, but I do not think most people understand what anxiety really means, right? So I'm curious to know. I need to really understand what it means. So from a neuroscience perspective, right? What actually is anxiety?
Yeah, so I mean, anxiety is an adaptive response. It's, scientifically speaking, we need to have some anxiety because it allows us to adapt to and potentially, escape a dangerous situation. And the problem, though, is that if it becomes chronic, then it's not really, serving any purpose. So there are brain circuits in the brain that underlie this feeling. It's really a fear response, is what it is, and it involves a structure in the brain called the amygdala. So the amygdala is a brain structure that is really important for processing negative emotions like fear and other anger and other strong emotions. And this circuit in anxiety basically just becomes overactive. And so when you get to the root of the problem, it's really looking at those uh, anxiety circuits. So what can we do at kind of the more circuit level? So we talk about neurons as being kind of the cells that make it allow us to think and to fear and to be happy. Um, and so what we're trying to do is target a specific receptor system. Um, and that's a receptor system that involves the neurotransmitter um, serotonin. Okay. So serotonin is a really important neurotransmitter in the brain. It's really important for mood. It's kind of a modulatory neurotransmitter, and it's been implicated in depression and anxiety. But what the current medications do, like the SSRIs, I'm currently taking a Zoloft, for example, for my anxiety, is that it basically increases serotonin in the brain. And the problem with that is that you actually have these molecules called receptors that bind to serotonin and mediate different responses. And in our brain, we have 15 different serotonin receptors. And so basically what these SSRIs are doing is, when you're trying to treat something like anxiety with the SSRI, it's a very broad kind of approach. You're really trying to rewire the whole house instead of fixing, one faulty circuit. And so we are actually trying to target one of the serotonin receptors. And that receptor is called the 5-HT2A receptor. And this receptor is the one that's really been implicated in things like schizophrenia and depression, anxiety, and memory impairments. And so what our approach is really, instead of just boosting serotonin everywhere, why don't we just kind of dial down the one receptor causing the problem? And that's the goal of that's really the benefit of gene therapy, is that it really allows you that precision to target a single molecule, a single receptor. So I know that was a lot of science there, but that's getting to the molecular problem, right? And kind of the difference between what we have available today and what is going to be available tomorrow for people like me.
Okay, gene therapy, right? So you mentioned that this one actually addresses the root cause instead of just treating it like surface level. But also you mentioned precision and fewer side effects. So why is that such a big shift?
Yeah, I mean, because that's part of the problem with a lot of the current medications is that these drugs were developed decades ago, and they basically don't target the circuitry. And you know, what we want to do is really change a single receptor. And when you do that, I mean that's really the problem with drugs, is that you get untoward side effects. And that's because drugs never do exactly what you think they do, or they are activating multiple circuits in the brain or in the body. So by by gene therapy, you're really dialing in one receptor, and now it's important to understand that that one receptor may have multiple roles, right, in the brain. So you still may get side effects, right? But in terms of precision, in terms of targeting the exact cause of why we have this fear response, it's a much it's a much better approach. You know, it's like using a scalpel instead of, you know, an axe, if you will.
Mm.
Um, you know, this is the type of therapy that really is coming, and we're not the only ones working on this, and it's not, you know, it's gene therapy is really, you know, exploding right now for all kinds of different diseases and disorders. So it's really kind of what I tell my students is really kind of the future of medicine.
All right. Wow. Okay. So where are we right now? With this research, how close is it to becoming widely available?
Yeah, I mean that's always the important question, right? So
Mhm.
um, one of the things that I'm doing that you know one of the reasons why I'm on your show too is to kind of promote my new book. It's called Brain Medicine. And in that book, I talk about gene therapy all the way from the, you know, kind of the A, B's, and C's. And there are already gene therapies that have been approved and are being used for things like muscular dystrophy, for sickle cell anemia, all kinds of different disorders. And many of those disorders, the gene therapies are designed for really life-threatening uh, diseases, right? Where people are gonna, you know, basically really suffer or even die. So that's another different approach of our company is that, you know, you know, people are obviously not going to die from anxiety or depression, but we want to be able to make these therapies available even in, you know, individuals that aren't suffering from a life-threatening disease. But we are still in what's called the preclinical stage. So, you know, there's still, you know, hurdles that we have to, you know, overcome. One of the things I talk about in my book is just the getting therapeutics into the brain is not trivial. So we have this thing called the blood-brain barrier that's designed to kind of protect our brain, which is great, right? Protects us from, you know, infections and poisons and things of that nature. But it really makes it difficult to get therapeutics into the brain if you're trying to treat a brain disorder. So I talk about my book about how we are actually using an intranasal therapy. So the interesting thing about taking a drug intranasally is that it can kind of bypass this blood-brain barrier. So that's a hurdle that we're trying to figure out right now. The the cost is another important element. You know, these gene therapies are expensive, and so how can we make those equitable, and how can people have access to these types of medications as we move forward? That's an important question. And then just the FDA pathway. You know, this is new for the our in the United States, the Food and Drug Administration. They're still trying to navigate kind of the rules and regulations. It's kind of a new frontier. And so we're having to do that too, right? How do we get a gene therapy approved? Because these drugs are just so different than, you know, our grandpa and our grandma's drugs and our parents' drugs. So, um, you know, right now for my own company, I would say you know, we're still probably a year or two away from human clinical trials, but you know, this isn't science fiction anymore. You know,
Mhm.
it's really happening, and so you know, you always want to make sure that these things are safe,
Mhm.
and so that's paramount is making sure that we're taking all the right steps. I know it sounds futuristic, but you know, like I said, The FDA has already approved some of these types of therapeutics, and there's dozens of clinical trials that are currently ongoing.
Hmm. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Troy. I must say thank you. This has been amazing, honestly, and especially talking about gene therapy, right? But looking at like reality and responsibility, there's always skepticism around new treatment. So, what should people realistically understand about this space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question.
Hmm.
Um, when, my company, one of the interesting things, and one of the reasons why I wrote this book is that whenever as a company, you're trying to raise capital, like from investors, right? So
Hmm.
that you can do the preclinical work. And one of the things that was very frustrating is that nobody understood what we were doing,
Hmm.
like the science. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book is that so people would understand that, hey, this is what's coming. The ability to use tools like CRISPR and RNA interference. Um, it's really the medicine of the future. And being able to demystify it and break it down, I think is one of the ways that once people understand what it really is and aren't scared of it, um, I think that basically will kind of open doors for companies like our own. And I think people have this wrong impression from, the mRNA vaccines that got such, when we talk about COVID vaccines, um, it 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 really is because people don't understand the science. And I think if they just understood the science, that would demystify and kind of remove the fears. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm trying to go on these podcasts and talk about my new book is that um, that these are good medications and we just need to understand what they're doing at the molecular level.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Roy, thank you so much. And I just want you to talk to someone out there, right? Particularly young adults who are dealing with anxiety and trying to build a stable life, right? So what is one thing they need to understand early so that you think can actually change everything for them?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm in a
Mm,
unique position because I'm also a professor
mm,
at my university, and actually this semester I'm teaching two classes.
mm,
One class it's called Brain Matters, and it's for
mm.
non-science majors. I have 100 students in that class,
Wow.
and then my other class is a introductory neuroscience class. And so I think just sharing my own experience about my own anxiety and showing them that you know uh, you know obviously students look up to their professors and most of them respect their professors, but just seeing that we're human and that we have the same problems as them. Again, it's really just kind of removing the stigma about um, anxiety and other neuropsychiatric disorders. And that's one of the things I really love about your generation, the younger generation, is they're very open about
Mm,
these things, right? I'm Gen X, and I grew up. We didn't really talk about these things because it was kind of considered a weakness if you had depression
mm,
or anxiety. And one of the things I really appreciate about your generation is that people aren't afraid to talk about their feelings and their problems. And that's really step number one in understanding yourself is being able to talk, right? Talk these things through. Counseling is a huge part of healing, getting to the root of your problems, not just about medications. trying to have a holistic approach to the patient, and that includes counseling. That includes being able to talk openly with your peers and your friends. And so, I think that's one thing that your generation really has going for it is that you're willing to explore these topics openly.
Mm. Wow, all right. Hey, and I must say you're right, actually. My generation, we actually do talk about it openly. And I think it's a good thing, right? It's at least people are getting the help that they need, right? People are starting to speak up and yes, because some people never really understood what anxiety really means. But because people are now talking and because we have people like you to help us understand these things and then even helping with medications too, that's a beautiful thing, so I must say thank you for that, actually, Dr. Troy. So
Yeah.
yes.
I mean,
Honestly.
I honestly, I wouldn't, I probably, I'm not one to share my personal stories and my personal experiences. But again, I should be thanking you and you guys, you're these 20-year-olds. You know, I have two 20-year-olds. And for, you know, for me to be able to speak about anxiety and my own personal experiences, it's been hard, but I don't think I would have been able to do it if I didn't have that feeling that people were open now.
Mm,
And it's not, I'm not looked upon as, being this weak person because
mm,
I'm struggling,
mm,
So it's a, I think um, it's a key idea about how we can help people like myself is
mm,
being able to communicate and have platforms like the one that you have right now.
right. Wow. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Troy. This has been amazing, right? And finally, I have this one question, right? So, beyond treatment, what role do lifestyle and mindset still play in managing anxiety?
Oh, I mean, it's huge, like you know, managing your stress. Stress is just such a huge negative factor in brain health,
Mm,
all across the board. And, I mean, we are living in such a stressful world right now.
mm,
Um, Especially your generation. It's, you can't, in the United States, my kids complain like, how am I ever going to own a home? Gas prices are up. My students are under all professional stressors. And, you know, how are we going to survive in this world is
mm,
it's a real challenge. And so, um, yeah, I think just being aware, being able to communicate, and understand that we're not alone, that you're not alone,
mm,
that helps a lot, right? That we're struggling through these stressors together, and I don't care what age you are.
mm. Wow. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Roy. Like I said earlier, this has been amazing. And conversations like this are always so important, especially for young adults, right, who are trying to have it all figured out, and for those who don't know exactly what to do. So yes, thank you. And it brings me to the final segment of my podcast. It's called the rapid fire segment.
Uh-oh. Okay,
Oh, I'm
here we
sure
go.
yeah, I'm sure you do amazing, actually. So, starting now, science or lived experience?
Can I say both?
Yes, you can, actually. All right. All right. So, is it both?
I think so. Yeah, I think
Mm,
um I don't think you can have these things in separate silos. Like they're all intertwined, and
mm,
certainly in this example, I would agree that both of those attributes are important.
okay. All right. So, awareness or treatment?
Um, wow, that's a hard one. Um, I obviously, I think we're all pretty aware, so I'd probably go with treatment there. I think, treatment can be tricky, and again, you really can't treat yourself. Like, it's
Mm,
okay to ask for help. It's okay to, again, talk, communicate, and just figuring out the right medication, the right counseling. Um, Treatment is tricky, and it does require, professional help. And so I would have to go with treatment there.
treatment. Okay. All right. So, what is one myth about anxiety?
Um, I think an important myth, well, that anxiety is a weakness, right?
Mm,
And it's not actually. We don't want to remove all of the anxiety. It's important to have a little bit of anxiety, as I said. For organisms, it's adaptive. But I think a myth is that it's a weakness. But I
mm,
think if we learn that it can be a strength, and its purpose is to help us be aware of situations, we can turn that weakness into a strength.
into strength. Exactly. Okay. So, what is one daily habit to reduce anxiety?
Oh, I mean, there's so many things you can do, but again, I think it just comes down to stress management.
Mm,
Just finding time to kind of relax your brain, um, get off social media. I think
mm,
that social media is a huge stressor. I don't do any social media, and my life is a lot better for it. So I think just taking time out and picking up a book, reading a book, going on a walk, doing things that will relax your brain and you know, not relying on kind of those quick uh, reward things like,
mm,
checking my phone. Did I get a like, or am I
mm,
getting a snap message?
mm,
I think just taking a break from that is very healthy.
All right. Wow. Okay. Thank you so much, Troy. And the final one is, what is the biggest misunderstanding about mental health?
Um, I think just from a personal point of view is that you kind of blame yourself.
Mm,
And, one of the things I think my students are really surprised at is when I tell them that the biggest risk factor, for example, for anxiety related disorders is childhood abuse, neglect, and
mm,
trauma. And so a lot of these things are not our fault. The, you know, we've been exposed to these traumas as children, and our brains just learned to react a certain way based on those traumas. And so just realizing that, um, it's nothing, in most cases, it's nothing that we've done personally. It's not our fault. It's a huge, relieves a huge burden. And again, it can open your mind to, okay, it's not my fault. I'm getting at the root of why I feel this way. Now, how can I fix the problem? You know, and I think that's the important point, is focusing on being a better person and feeling better, and getting the proper treatment.
All right. Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Troy. This has been an amazing episode. And I want to say this to listeners, right? Anxiety isn't something to push through or ignore or hide, right? It's something to understand at the level of
Yes.
the brain, the body, and even, lived experience. So yes, that would be my take on
I think
anxiety.
it's a great take.
Thank
It's a,
you.
yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Troy. All right.
Thank you.
So, yeah, where can listeners get to, learn more about your work, your book, and also, medicine, right?
Yeah. So my book, Brain Medicine, it's not out yet. It'll be out in
Mm.
about a month, but you can pre-order it on
Okay.
Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and through my publisher, Penguin Random House. But Yeah, I also have Instagram and Facebook,
Mm.
but I honestly I have an assistant. I don't even go on those things. So I don't even know what if you asked me what my Instagram was, I couldn't tell you.
Wow.
So, but I'm on there somewhere. I think if you search my name, you'll find me.
Okay.
Um, but uh, but yeah, I think that the book again is called Brain Medicine. I think if you just Google that, it will pull up
Mm.
information about how to find me and how to look into whether or not you'd be interested in the book.
All
So
right.
just one thing about the book also is that besides the science, I also interweave kind of my own personal stories about anxiety. So it's really kind of again a unique perspective in terms of combining, you know, my own personal experiences with the actual science.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Troy. This has been a very powerful and important episode, like I said earlier. And yes, to my listeners, thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, just as it did in me, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this, and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episode. Thank you, Dr. Troy. Do have a wonderful day ahead of you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
All
It was a
right.
pleasure.
You're welcome. Take care.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Mm.